All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Village Project, where we talk about how raising successful children takes a strong community. I'm your host, Michael Hodges, the community father. And my goal is to help the Antelope Valley to become a community with a solution oriented mindset. That means we reframe problems as challenges. We take responsibilities for the community, the problems in our community. We ask the right questions. We maintain a positive attitude and we commit to continuous learning. Our way of addressing the issue of our children's underperformance in school is to empower parents to be the change that their children need. And today, we have a guest speaker, the wonderful Brenda White, who is a member of the Antelope Valley community. She's also a mother in the local church. She has extensive experience in adopting and with foster children. She's a mother of five, uh, of which two are her biological, and the other three are adopted. And she moved from Michigan to California in 1962, and we're gonna start the conversation right now. How are you doing tonight, Brenda?
I'm I'm doing fabulous. I'm doing fabulous. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm good. What do you think about the concept of the Village Project?
Well, it takes a village to raise children.
Come on now.
Yeah, back in the days,
Uh,
the neighbors helped to raise the children. It wasn't just parents. Parents would go to work and children would come home from school, and it wasn't always the parents weren't always home. So kids would get their snacks from their neighbors in the neighborhood, or the people in the neighborhood always knew what time those kids would come home from school. Sometimes they gave them a snack, sometimes they helped them with homework. So I believe in the village concept of helping to raise children.
when you were talking, you know what I heard that parents supported each other.
They did.
So, so it wasn't necessarily focusing on the children, it was parents actually supporting each other.
That's
And,
right.
and, and that's what we believe at the Village Project. So I wanted to ask you, um, you know, I do know that you adopted kids and you adopted your son, and I don't know if you want to mention his name or I'm not sure how you feel about that. But if you do,
Okay.
that's all you can. But I did want to say you didn't adopt your first son until you had two sons that were in middle school. Now, wasn't that already a handful to deal with?
Yeah, it
Okay.
was. But I think what happened with me was I was told that the child, I didn't know much about adoption at the
Okay.
time. And I was told at the time that they didn't have anywhere to place the child. And
Okay.
it just kind of weared on me for a couple of days. And it really bothered me that this child didn't have a home, was not going to have a home. Because when I first was told about him, he wasn't born yet. He was in the womb, but the mother had already expressed that once she had this baby, she was going to leave it at the hospital. And so that disturbed some of the people that knew her, that knew me. We had some connected friends. And they're the ones that reached out. It was my oldest sister that reached out and said, "Hey, there's this baby that's going to be born. Are you interested?" And at first I said, "No, no, I'm not." Um, but it bothered me. So for a couple of days, it weared on my nerves, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I made contact with my sister. My sister passed my phone number on to a social worker, and the social worker made contact with me and told me about this baby that was about to be born. And she said, "I'll call you back after he's born and we can start the process if you're interested." And that's the rest of it is history. I mean, we went through the process. There's a whole long process when it comes to adoption. You have to go through a vetting process. You have to go through the DOJ, which is the Department of Justice, to make sure you don't have a criminal background and so forth and so on. And you have to take classes. And so at the time, my husband and I both took those classes. We were about to finish those classes And I think my son at that time had already been born. He was close to 4 months old. And so
Tell
when
us,
we,
can you tell us a little bit about him? What are some challenges that he had?
Andrew, he was, uh, first of all, he's not the same culture as us. So that was one challenge as he got, older and started school and so forth. But another challenge that he had was he just couldn't sit still. He had been diagnosed, I think, when he was about 5 years old with ADHD. And that was a challenge by itself because trying to calm him down, trying to keep him, you know, involved in different things. And what we did was he was involved in all kinds of sports, but his favorite sport was basketball. So he started playing basketball when he was 4.5. And that just kind of did the trick for him. He still had some issues because by the time he was in third and fourth grade, he had some issues sitting still, getting through his schoolwork, getting through his homework. I mean, he had a couple of meltdowns at school. First grade, I get a phone call from a teacher saying, we're having story time and your son is over in the corner. He's taken off his shoes. He threw them across the classroom while we're sitting on the rug listening to story. He doesn't want to listen to the story. What do you want me to do? I said, leave him sitting there. I said, just take his shoes and give them back to him and let him sit there. And she did just that. And he finally calmed down and joined the rest of the group and continued with his day. That was first grade. In second grade, he had a really awesome teacher. She was the type of teacher that gave him a lot of kudos, a lot of kudos. If he smiled that day, she gave him a kudo. She gave him a sticker. She gave him, a pencil. She gave him all kind of perks because she felt like he was smart enough to do his work. He just had some anxiety in terms of doing it and getting it done. And so she used these tools to help him. And it really did help him. We used to have conversations about some of the things that he would do or some of the things that he would say. And she would say, yeah, well, I gave him a sticker, but he was so excited. You know, every time she would give him a happy face sticker, and she would say, good job, great job, and that did something to him. But in addition to all that, his being able to have two older brothers because his brothers played football. And every day after school, when I would pick him up from after school care, we would pick up his brothers from football practice. That was the highlight of his day. I remember one occasion when I was getting ready to get off the freeway to pick up his brothers, not to pick up his brothers. We were going home and we passed the street. Now he couldn't read. He was 5 years old. He could not read yet. But he knew how to read the signs. He knew we passed the street where we normally get off to pick up the brothers, and he just had a major meltdown because he thought I was not going to pick those brothers up from football practice. So he started crying and he started having a fit and all of that. But the boys were going to another training after football. And then I think they had like a pizza party or something because the season was getting ready to start. And so I didn't have to pick them up that night. Their coach was going to drop them off. But that was the first time that he had ever had a meltdown because of his brothers, not being able to pick up his brothers from football practice. But he started playing basketball himself. And when he started playing, um, the coach really connected with him. He became really clingy with his coach. Even to this day, he still knows that coach, and he's 27 years old. So the same coach still calls. He still comes around. We still talk on the phone. He's not coaching basketball anymore. He's coaching football now, but he still remembers my kids when they were little and they were growing up and they grew up on his team. So they still have a connection. But that was the one thing that helped him to get through school because he had something to look forward to.
Hearing that. But then later on, you told me about a conversation you had with him when you asked him if he wanted any little brother or sister, and he told you yes. So you
Yes,
started going through the process again,
right,
and
right.
somehow you ended up with five. And I want to know what in the world caused you to, at that time, to adopt five children, even
Well,
though it wasn't a permanent situation.
no, actually, it was five in a family. When the adoption worker called me, he said, "We really don't want to split the kids up. Um, so we were just wondering if you guys would take all five." So at the time, my husband said, "Yeah, let's take them all." Well, we had the room, we had a big enough house, and we could have taken all five. And we started the process. But about midway through the process, you have to usually go before a judge at Edelman's court, which is the children's court. The oldest child of that five sibling group decided that her and two of the siblings did not want to be they didn't want to be adopted. They didn't really want to be separated from their two youngest siblings, but they didn't want to be adopted. They wanted to wait till their mom got her life together, and they wanted to wait on her. And that's what they did. So we ended up with two of those children, the two youngest ones, which were 4 and 6 years old, one boy, one girl. And that's when the real roller coaster ride started because now we're juggling two teenagers and we're juggling three little ones. So that's when uh, the challenges started because the last two children that were adopted came through foster care, um, but they, as foster children, they were not foster children to us because they fast tracked the adoption. And so we went to court and we got the paper signed and we got them into therapy and all of that. But that's when challenges really, really started with the three youngest. So
Three older ones opted to stay in foster until their mom got herself together. Okay.
yes,
So can you tell us about the challenges that the two young ones had that stayed with you?
yeah. The 4 year old had developmental speech issues. So you really couldn't understand what he was saying. And so it was a challenge trying to get him into speech therapy. At first, it was a roller coaster ride trying to do that. Um, Somehow, the district lost part of their funding for the pathologist. So he didn't get services right away. He was actually had already started kindergarten when the services started. So that was a challenge by itself. I'm trying to understand him and being able to communicate with him because his speech, he couldn't enunciate words. Uh, I understood him, but it was more like baby talk. But some other people couldn't. And the adoptions worker always asked me to translate whenever he would come around to talk with them or to see the kids. My son would say certain things to him and he couldn't understand. So he always had to have me translate. Another thing with him is he was very busy, very active. Didn't like vegetables, did not like fruit. He wanted to eat junk because in his foster home, the foster mom gave him a lot of candy. And we had issues with his teeth, where I had to take him to the dentist. He had one tooth that was gonna be gangrene. They didn't take it out, but they put some type of medication in there because they said eventually it's gonna, because it was a baby tooth, it's gonna fall out and he's gonna have permanent teeth. So I had to kind of watch that process. That was one thing. Another thing, he didn't like vegetables. He didn't like fruit. So I had to come up with a creative way to get some vegetables in his system.
What did you do?
Well, that was another game. We played a game.
Uh-huh.
We went to the grocery store. We bought all types of fruits and vegetables. We bought a nice heavy duty blender and yogurt, plain
Okay.
yogurt, and we started making smoothies. And the game was I would make the smoothie. He wouldn't see me make the smoothie, but he knew what type of fruits and vegetables we bought. So I would make them, and then I would call him in the kitchen and I said, okay, I need you to tell me what's in this smoothie. And so it became a game. So every day, in order for him to eat his fruits and veggies, we had to put it in a smoothie. And that became a game, but it became fun to him. Now, as he got older, there were certain fruits and vegetables he still didn't like, but there are some that he did. So, even now, he likes broccoli, he likes cabbage. Those are things he would not eat before. So it was kind of a challenge doing that. The challenge with my daughter was she had a lot of sensitivity issues. She didn't always get along with other kids. She didn't like to be touched, and that was part of her disability. So when she was in therapy, they had given her a diagnosis, and that diagnosis actually mimicked the way she was feeling. In addition to that, she was kind of feeling like she didn't belong. And so, because she had some rejections in her biological family, um, dealing with her was always a challenge because she was always feeling less than. Now, it took a lot of years for her to actually get herself together. It's been a roller coaster ride. She's 25 years old now, and she's a lot better than she used to be. But the challenge that came with raising her was huge, you know, because every day was something different. Every day it was either somebody didn't like her, or somebody talked about her, or somebody, didn't like her hair. But mind you, she has beautiful hair, nice, wavy, big jet black curly hair, but she didn't like it. She didn't think it was great. She thought it was terrible, because her sisters didn't have that hair. They had straight hair. So, working with her and trying to get her to understand that this is the way God made you and you're perfect. You're perfect. But it took a lot of years for her to even believe that, you know. So
I
she
took
had challenges getting along with other people, other children. So, yeah.
so it appears to me that you took these two children who had been traumatized, abused, and neglected, and you ended and had moderate success. I mean, they turned out to
Yeah.
be adults who are, I, I would say,
Thriving.
thriving. Okay,
Yeah.
so all right, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. And very helpful. I especially like the way you kind of really came up with a creative way to make your son eat fruits and vegetables, because that was a challenge I had as a father. I was just the softy when it came to, my kids, but that
Hmm.
was a good idea. Um, I was asking you about adoptive parents because you were one, parents who adopt, and I asked you about how and you said that they're usually invested and they usually form real connections. Although you had heard some horror stories, for the
Yeah.
most part, they were people that really were invested in their kids. And
Yeah.
you made a comment. You said that's because there's no social worker that stops by to make them accountable, right?
No, there isn't. After
Okay.
you adopt, no, everything goes away, because now you've moved from one bucket to the next bucket. They're no longer foster children. They're now adopted children. So now they're your children, as if you birthed them into the world. So there is no one watching over you, holding you accountable for anything, unless one of your children decides to go back to foster care. So there are times when children do, they feel out of place, or they feel that they're not being treated fairly, or there are too many children in the home and they feel like they're not special enough. So some of them do go back, there are kids that go back to foster care. And when they go back to foster care, the process starts all over for them, because now they have to be placed with a foster home that's certified. They also have to be,
Your sound
uh,
is sensitive.
I'm sorry.
Your sound sounds a little distorted.
Oh, it does? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't know what just happened, but it just all of a sudden started.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm,
Wonder why.
mm,
I don't get that.
okay.
Can you hear me? Is it clear now?
Ah, no, it still sounds a little bit metallic. It sounds like a robot is talking.
Uh-oh. That's not good. I'm definitely not a robot.
Uh-uh.
Okay, let
So
me works. Is that better?
now I'm still getting that. Wow. So let's see. Um, what we could do is log out and log back in, and then we'll pick the recording back up. How about
Okay.
that? Okay, let's
Okay.
do
That's
it.
fine. Okay.